Welcome to Quintessential Conversations, where we have conversations about quintessential things. What's on your mind today, Wiley?
Uh, Nothing much. I've been chilling. I guess some of the things I thought about as I remember a question you had before was what would life be like when you make it? When we make it.
Yeah, and that kind of comes from a YouTube video, Colin and Samir, and they put out a whole YouTube masterclass. And it was like, what does success look like? What does your day to day life look like when you make it? You know what I'm saying? It's like, and then start incorporating those things that you want to do forever into your day to day life because then you're living to be successful. For example, I do screen print and make a lot of shirts, but I'm like, I don't want to be packing orders, putting in shipper labels all day. That's not really what I want to do. I more enjoy, being in coffee shops, doing research on things and talking about the things like, I care about, things I feel like that would make the world a better place. So I realized the thing I should be chasing is the thing that I could see myself do every day.
Right. And I believe it's good to have that practice just to kind of wrote it down, forming to it, and you know, same goes with I think a lot of ideas. Is just to have that routine to do one small little step towards your goal and stuff to eventually you start living it, and then as long as you have your financial straight and everything, and you're really you're good to go. That's kind of helps you accomplish whatever you want. So it's a good thing to do, and that's a good thought process I like because sometimes you might already be doing the things that you already chase and stuff like that, or um, it's another quote is like careful what you wish for because you might get it. Like if you wish for certain things, then you might actually start getting it, and you might not even realize it. So at least for me, where I was always writing down to take photos and make these beats and stuff, and like you said earlier, we already took me a while to make a track list or have the idea of making a track list. And then you were like, well, you might already have it. And I was like, you're right. If I chop it up and do short videos, long videos, and it's kind of already there. So, and you can just lay it down in a playlist, put it on a DJ turntable. So,
Yeah, I was talking to Alex yesterday about it a little bit. It's like oftentimes we chase our goals relentlessly, and once we reach them, we just kind of move on to the next one and the next one. And oftentimes we get frustrated with now not being able to achieve something greater and get to the point we want to be. But sometimes if you just kind of stop and look yourself in the mirror, you realize the person you want to become, you already were for a lot longer than you realize.
right, right. Yeah. And then, another thing I wrote down was, I guess this kind of helps out further along with like wanting versus needing things. Like, what do you want? What do you need? Um, and of course, your dreams and stuff like that is really good. And it's like you need your dreams to help you look forward to something. And I thought following that is like find something that won't end, so you have something that you're constantly chasing, which helps out. And what do you really want to go for, and then what do you need to go for, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think a lot of times it's not necessarily the what you're chasing that's important, but oftentimes it's the like why you're chasing. Recently, I was talking about a little bit the video from Fujimoto, the well movie. It's called Look Back, and it kind of follows two artists. Really good movie, so you should definitely watch it. But the fundamental question was like the two different struggles of just one with crippling anxiety that prevented her from really getting out and chasing her dreams, and the other one that stopped doing art and started only doing it to reach up to a certain standard she couldn't reach, but didn't realize her own talents. So the whole time she's chasing to get to something that she didn't even necessarily need and ignoring what she already had. And it wasn't until the two kind of separate and go their own paths towards the end of the movie that they fully realized what they needed the whole time. There's more that goes into it, but like I said, definitely watch the movie. But I think for us, if you keep chasing something and lose yourself in the chase and don't realize why you started, running in the first place, you'll just kind of be lost. But if you can find the why instead of the what, I feel like a lot of things will go a lot easier because you will always have that motivation when things get hard.
Mm. It's kind of like when I worked at this old corporate job. It was they said, overtime is voluntary, but when you do overtime or sign up for overtime, it's important to have a goal in mind or why you're doing that extra work because that's what's going to make you get through overtime or stuff like that. And I was just like, yeah, your own sanity is going to outweigh the money at some point. So it's like I don't want to.
I feel that because at a certain point, it's like at my job, which I won't go into too much detail, but it's like often it's like, oh, do this extra thing, do this extra thing. Oh, we're paying you, we want to pay you for this, we want to pay you for this. I'm like, at the end of the day, at least for me, it was just not about the money, it's about the time.
Exactly.
And it's like, what's the point of working so hard all the time to fund something that you're not doing or practicing? And by the time you get to the point, either you don't have the amount you thought you would, or you don't have the skill you needed, and you don't have the time to get it back.
Mhm.
It's really kind of like a balance of everything.
Yeah, I think that's really what life is just balancing everything. But yeah, like even like today, I asked for a raise because because of the snow day and snow in Florida, crazy. But he had time off work, but he wasn't getting any like admin pay or whatever other pay that helps compensate for that. It was just like a show up kind of dealio. But I was like, and he was gonna go to his other job today, but then he was like, "Yeah, I'm just stay home." I'm like, "Yeah, your time is a lot more important because you can be replaced just like that, or it's crazy. It's like next one up, and then they just kind of maintain their business while they just cycle through employment and stuff. So that's always a difficult thing. But sometimes your time or just that moment that you're there, just to be alive and not have to worry about any sort of work and stuff, is a lot more valuable than money sometimes.
Yeah.
And you feel it.
Remember you telling me it's just like, I gotta find something to do. I gotta find something to do. That's like, well, do I? Is existence not enough in general? Does everything always have to be oriented all the time? Or can you just kind of be?
Judging, it can be natural, and it is natural to judge because it helps us make decisions. But I guess it also, the other part of it is how we judge. Like, are you judging someone just based on their character or just how they look, or are you actually judging how they say, how they make you feel, which I think is more important, and how what you do with that information. Like how do you treat them moving forward? Is it something like, oh, you're crazy, and then you find out they are crazy, or well, hey, you're crazy, and then you end up being the coolest person in the world, which I think that's also an important aspect is to be able to change your opinion on certain things sometimes. Like it's okay to admit that you're wrong about things as long as you're not hurting or killing anyone. Like, oh, I was wrong initially because I've met people like that before. I actually met that about you. I was like, this guy doesn't really look like the nicest, but then I found out you're pretty cool
Most of the time.
most of the time. but no, there's people I've met out further where like you sit straight up, you're like, oh, I don't think I'm gonna be really good friends with this person or whatever, and then you find me and you're pretty much lifelong friends and stuff.
Yeah, matching tattoos.
Matching tattoos.
No, I'm kidding. But I think judging is the interesting concept because it's like people don't give the time to understand somebody, but then you look at the other side of that and it's like, well, do they do you have the right to be understood?
Yeah.
And stepping back and saying that is one thing, but also it's like making assumptions hurts a lot of things. It hurts your perception of the world and perception of the people, and also you rob other people of giving the opportunity to give you some type of understanding about them.
Exactly.
It's like you lose the opportunity to learn by judging. And I think comparison oftentimes can be it's like a double edged sword. It could be a really good thing, but also a really bad thing. To where it's like I'm comparing your life to my life without knowing anything about your life. So that's why you got the phrase like take a walk in somebody else's shoes or however it goes.
Don't be too quick to judge.
Yeah. But everybody judges. I feel like comparison is a natural thing, but what you do after that initial judgment, I think, is what's important. You make your initial assumptions because it's important. It's like that guy looks dangerous. Well, are you willing to find out?
Mm-hmm.
The whole "don't talk to strangers" thing,
Mm-hmm.
less the kids, but that's a precaution because, like, yes, you may find a really cool thing or learn a good lesson, or maybe you'll actually give you candy this time, or your kid just got kidnapped because they talked to a stranger, or that dude that you thought was dangerous was actually dangerous, and you just found out, and now you're missing a leg, or you Swiss cheese.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. It's a very complicated topic, but I think like everything, there's a balance to it. It's like the easiest way is to just not make an assumption in general, being like, I'm either, oh, do I care enough to understand that person? No, I'll keep moving on with my life. Yes, all right, let me go talk to them. Let me go ask some questions. Let me go find out more about this topic. It's like seeing like a 10-second TikTok on a celebrity or somebody else, and that's your whole opinion on them from 10 seconds. But you don't give way to like, okay, I wonder why this person like this way. I don't have to like him still, but I want to understand. I feel like also just the age of microwave success or just things being very quick leads to kind of a culture of judging in a way to where a lot of people losing the skills to do research themselves. They just don't know how, or they just take things at face value or very quickly.
Yeah.
It's like everything's a book and they don't know how to read, so they have to judge it by the cover.
Right. I definitely think time plays in a factor how long you do that for, or how your habits are. One thing is, I know you definitely learn something from everyone. Even if it's like, oh, that person's crazy. Well, we learn that that person's crazy, so we stay away from them. But I've noticed that I feel like you can learn one thing from someone, and then they can teach you a lot. Even if it's like some of the, I don't know, like the strictest people or people who are crazy, they might say one thing that is like, oh, that's the reason that they're doing that, or this is the reason why, or you kind of find out why they're doing things. So like see where they started from, where they begin. Like if you find out like if there's a result of something that happened, then look at the beginning where made it start.
Yeah, I remember learning a very valuable lesson when I was in like I think either seventh or eighth grade. I think it was seventh grade. Regular basketball season, right? Seventh grade team. We lost every game. But I remember this one kid on the team that made it just because we needed 15 players and only 15 people tried out, so everybody made the team. And he was autistic, so he couldn't really catch the ball. He couldn't shoot. He couldn't dribble. So he just kind of like on the court. And I was like, why did we keep him? Right? I didn't understand at the time. I didn't really have the perspective I needed. Now I was judging. So I remember going into the AAU season, and his dad's the coach of the team. They put you on. And this league was random. It was like upward on the starting, basketball leagues. And I'm like, how much does this guy really know? If his son is this bad at basketball, not really understanding the other problems at the time. And I remember from him that has never coached an actual basketball game other than upward, I probably learned the most about how I coach now. But very simple concepts. He was like, he taught the fundamentals in a fundamental way to where you can understand. And I've, talked to coaches all the way from college, D1 to NBA, setting seminars, all that to kind of cultivate my own coaching experience. But I remember learning so much about just the importance of fundamentals and also not judging a book by its cover from there. Because I'm like, at the time, I didn't, I didn't really know about autism because I was at a private school, and everybody there just was just quote unquote regular. It turns out everybody there was honestly weirder than a lot of other kids. But it's interesting that's like after that, I'm like, I can learn something from everybody. Speaking of that too, my dad used to yell at me all the time when I was a kid because I talked too much. He always say practice being quiet, and he was trying to teach me to learn to listen. So that's what I started doing, and then from kind of those two lessons, I really started sitting down. I'm like, I'm going to try to understand this person before I quote unquote judge. And if I feel like judging, I just don't have to.
Right.
Like, it's crazy, man, because I'm a teacher now, and I tell the kids all the time, hey, you got nothing but grass and opportunity out here on the PE field. if you don't like somebody, guess what? You don't have to be anywhere near them. And it's like we kind of choose our own prison cell sometimes, to put it that way, to where the door is wide open, but you decide to stay in a box.
I say that goes a long way with a lot of things. I'd say even like addiction, where I told this philosophy teacher I had who would always sit out and he would always smoke cigarettes. I was like, "You ever thought about stopping?" He's like, "Yeah, but there's certain things in your brain where it's like it's bad, and like this and that, but then it's like you just decide not to do it." I'm like, yeah, and I think you were talking about a study with like rats, and they gave them drugs and stuff, but it was
Right.
their environment that they're in that made them
Yeah,
cut
so
back.
pretty much the experiment was, I think it was with cocaine. They put two water bottles in an empty rat cage, which the empty part is important because there's like the rats 100% of the time prefer the cocaine water versus the regular water. Then somebody was like, hey, this experiment is wrong. So he made what he called a rat park. He had like a bunch of different toys, wheels, things for the rats to do, exercise, other people, other rats in the cage, not other people. But in that experiment, none of the rats kept going back to the cocaine water. They would prefer the regular water. And it's like the opposite. The problem with addiction sometimes isn't just the addictive part of whatever you're doing, because it doesn't necessarily have to be drugs. It's oftentimes the environment you put yourself in. If you allow yourself to be in that empty cage with the door wide open, instead of going out into quote unquote rat park and experiencing life, doing the things you want to do, having fun, but maybe the thing that has such a hold on you won't anymore. Because if you're full, then you don't need someone to fill a hole.
Yeah, I can definitely like see that because there's times where like if you like be like sitting around doing something all day or just smoking, drinking, or whatever, and then you actually go out and hang out with people, and they're just constantly, good people who are
Mm-hmm.
motivating you, and they lead by a good example, and it definitely makes you want
Yeah,
to
it's
just
kind
be
of like
inclined to that.
it's kind of like really the realization of you are a product of your environment,
Mm.
which
Where we hang around is
yeah,
gonna be like,
which I think that does go deeper, but it's like going back to the whole psychology thing of nature versus nurture. I feel like it really is a combination of both, despite how you want to argue it. Because you have, as a teacher, I see a lot of kids in like the worst environment. Like they're homeless, like they can't stay with their parents because there's nowhere for them to sleep at night. So they're staying with a relative. They go up and yet they still have all straight A's. They still succeed. Then you have kids that seem like they have everything, live in a giant house, have all the new stuff, and they're failing every class. And it's like these two different things, but it's kind of like always in the person that making a decision. I think the great thing about this is like whatever decision they're making right now doesn't necessarily have to be their final decision. So even the worst stories can turn out better if that kid in themselves decides like I'm tired of this, I want to change. Or sadly, some of the kids that were doing so well at one point, something may change with them and be like, I don't care anymore, and it's just start going quote unquote downhill.
yeah,
But I think a lot of times our perception of things is interesting and our like judging. We only know what we know sometimes. You know what I'm saying? In that, like, if we're only told we're supposed to do this, then that's the only thing we're going to believe. That's why I'm like, it's interesting because we talked about this off camera. The whole just quote unquote government propaganda, which I'm not going to put on my tinfoil hat and go down that rabbit hole, but it was interesting because it's like I watched this video and was talking about the TikTok man, and his analysis of it was that they wanted to ban TikTok not because it's the TikTok problem, because it's the internet problem. And now everybody from around the world is finally communicating in one spot. Because that's happened before, and it's like, oh, our government lies about this, but actually it turns out to be true. Our government says this about y'all. Oh, well, that's actually false. And just worldwide communication to where you kind of escape the bubble you're in. Because I think we talked about this a little bit before. Everything kind of always boils down to control. And before control comes power, and before power comes money, so on and so forth. So it's like, how can you control the biggest group of people?
yeah. I think a really important thing is I think what what I believe everyone needs to do is to travel outside the country at least
Mm.
once because when I went to Germany, I was like, this is just a whole different world. It's not just like the politics part of it. It's just like people don't understand that there is a whole new world out there.
Mm.
Like, one thing I like is another thing I like is geography and stuff, certain landmarks or architecture and just locations where they say, "Oh, have you ever seen this place before?" And it's like something crazy. Like there's this one part on Earth that it has like 24 hours of sunlight.
Yeah.
It's like because the Earth is just spinning in just that one location. It might get like a little bit darker. It's that one part, but I was like, dang, I've never seen this. Or you see like, man, there's this one country. It's like a palace, and it has this big fountain. It's all gold, and that's the country. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what is this? You know, like, and then you pick some random location on the map and look it up. There was another time we were playing I think it was Rocket League or Overwatch or something. And it was one of a friend of a friend, and then it was like 12 o'clock at night here, or 11 o'clock. He's like, "Yeah, I got to get ready for school." We're like, "What?" He said, "Where you at?" And he said like Kyrgyzstan or something. We're like, "What?" He was on the other side of the world and he was starting his day. I was like, "That's just crazy." Like to think about that, and I looked it up, and it's just like there's just a whole new way of living in different spots, even like in small villages and stuff, or you have those islands that have people who aren't even up to date with civilization, and then or some that are or that are slowly building their way up. So it's interesting to see, but there's more. And I even thought about like, what if you knew every language? You would understand so much more just what people are doing, what they say, how they live.
Yeah, I think
Great.
culture was so important, and it's like if you can go into somebody else's culture and give it an opportunity and try to understand it, your perspective will be so much wider. I think a lot of times if you refuse to change your perspective, you're kind of stuck in a bubble. And I think being able to have a place to see a bunch of different cultures, or even traveling to see those cultures, live there for a little bit, or just see the people, and because it's like in America, I feel like it's a lot of individualism for a lot. You got to get your own, listen to that. Excuse me. But in other cultures, a lot of it's based on community. So things they value, we won't necessarily value. So where it's like they won't have a problem doing one thing and sharing versus us, it's like, oh, this is an opportunity to make more money for yourself. Things like that. Which it's a lot more nuanced than that. So I don't want to necessarily water it down, but it's definitely important. Like, and then language. Language is such a huge part of culture too. Because I was looking into a little bit of just like unique languages. There's one language that I wish I remembered where it was from, but they speak not in left and right, up and down, but north, south, east, and west. So people that grew up their whole life in that culture know like their equilibrium stuff. They know where those cardinal directions always are. So they can be in a building and be like, oh, north's that way. You can just take them somewhere else. Oh, south's that way. Because they talk in that way. So everything they do is oriented to understand. So in their language, they kind of understand that. And to us, shoot, sitting here right now, I have no clue where north, south, east, and west is. I'm like, well, I guess the sun sets in the east, so maybe it's over there, and I can kind of figure it out from there. But
Mhm. Yeah. It also made me think like when I learned sign language a little bit, where that really changed my perspective on language and stuff as well, because um, they're normal people, they just can't hear. Like it's just simple as that. And then like they're like, if you're born deaf, you never know what sound is non-existent. And a couple of things like one was like cat. I think it's cat or something, or for the whiskers. They're like, so we know what cat is, but when they do the sign, it's this fur ball thing with whiskers. That thing. That's what that is. They don't know what a cat is. They just that. And like clapping. They don't do clap. They do that. Just show like, hey, you're celebrating and stuff like that. Another one was when I was in it was like not psych philosophy. That was an interesting class. This guy was like, yeah, it was a green chalkboard. He's like, yeah, I'm colorblind. He's like, oh, so you like, oh yeah, you know what, like what green is? And the teacher was kind of demonstrating, like, you don't really. It's like, yeah, that wasn't. It's like, I'm not sure what that is. Like, it's green, and people weren't grasping the concept, so they started getting frustrated with him. And the teacher's like, enough, enough. And then he was like, see, this happens every time. And I'm like, wow. I was like, that's crazy. Like, you don't know what green is, so like, that's just a very interesting concept. So it's like just imagery and stuff like that, but it even makes you think, like, is everyone actually seeing the same things that you're seeing?
That's true too. It was like, I don't know if it was a study or if it's just something I had a conversation about, but it's like, you ever wonder if we perceive the same wavelength of light the same? So, like, is my blue actually your red? But since every blue is always your red, we see it as the same.
Right.
So, if all the colors are actually swapped in everybody's eyes, so it all our perception would be slightly different. Or even if everything was like shifted a couple tones over, like not light and dark, just kind of colored, but we always perceived it that way. And we communicate the same because we're pointing at the same thing and everything has the same amount of difference. So I wonder if that's true, like if we all really see the same.
That's really interesting. It's really interesting. It's just, you never know what other people see, or if even if like we're talking, if there's something that's manipulating it to make it seem like that way, or it kind of goes back to like the video games things where it's like you don't really see what's behind your head necessarily. They what's that, like the cat, Schrodinger's cat? It's like it's both alive and dead until you actually observe it.
Yeah,
But
that was a little
yeah,
complicated.
it's complicated.
Well, I can simplify it, but the actual like I guess lesson from it or realization isn't what's perceived, but the idea is like Schrodinger left the cat in a box, right? And until you open the box, you can't know if the cat is still alive or still dead. Talking about how particles, when they're observed, they do one thing, and when they're not being observed, they do another thing, or they act like another thing. And then it was a whole experiment to where it's like they observed it halfway through the process, and then they changed right when they were observed. So it's like, oh, they went back in time, which I think that has been somewhat more figured out and elaborated on, but the idea is like I guess you don't know, like both options are true until you pick an option. It's almost like branching timelines in a way.
Yeah, it almost seems like it's just a big video game. Kind of reminds me of like you're a character, you go through these bubbles, and these bubbles is kind of like just kind of they go off screen, then you look at it, and then it just goes the other way. It's like, or you try to chase it, it's like you're not gonna get it. So it's
And the whole thing of like it's a 50-50 whether we're all in a simulation or not.
right. Everyone could just be an actor, and they just be really really good at it. So that's where I'm like, well, as long as they're just, I'm more like just keep lying to me kind of deal. Because then if you're really truly alone, then it's like, damn, like everyone's like, yeah, we are actors and stuff.
And I've seen too many movies with this plot for it not to be true now. Oh no, it's very interesting. I'll bring this up kind of in the same sense. So I was watching some video game history videos, and they went over the entire story of Mortal Kombat. I'm not going to get into that because it is way more complicated than I think it should be. But I appreciate how much care and dedication goes into the lore of video games because people do care about it,
Right.
right? And there was two different realms, right? Specifically, there was a chaos realm and an order realm. And in the section of the story, the character basically was out at the curfew, so he got thrown in jail for a ridiculous amount of time. So it kind of looks at like if everything was all good versus if everything was all bad, right? To where it's like there really is like balance. Why balance? It kind of told me why balance is important, right? Because in a perfect society, right, if you make a small mistake, then that's seen as such a big deal. So like he was out 1 minute after curfew, right before he walked in his house. He's thrown in jail for 50 years. To us, that seems like a ridiculous punishment. But then you have Chaos Realm. And the thing is, there is no rules. Everything is anarchy, right? But then what if someone does something too bad or something to you? Now it's like, oh, you crossed the line. So good and bad kind of always will show their face. And it's like if things are too good, then corruption is still gonna happen. If things are too bad, corruption is still gonna happen. So that's why I think like things kind of always balance themselves out, or something greater has to be steering you. It's kind of like the whole philosophy principle of just what you believe. So where it's like the phrase is some look up, some look down, some look within, and some don't look at all.
Yeah. It's interesting. Balance, 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 balance. Balanced diet.
And you look at different just ancient societies, even different religions, everything has some concept of, good, with good comes evil, with light comes shadow, this and that, because it's like you got the concept of karma, you reap what you sow, you have the yin and the yang. All these things kind of show, so it's like there has to be something to it if a bunch of different people from different places with no way to communicate all came up with the same concepts. But will we ever truly know the right answers? And then the other question is, do we really need those answers? It's like the
Will it change much?
scene where it's like it always has been and pulls the trigger.
Yeah. We're Edge of Tomorrow where it's like, no, you're not supposed to drink that. Well, we're dead. We're dead. So done. We're dead.
Yeah.
For life.
Anything else on your mind?
Nah, nothing really. Just keep finding stuff to do because then time doesn't stop. So we're stuck here. So just keep finding something to do to keep you busy. So that's a really important thing is just finding something that you just constantly work at that shows progress, but then you'll never like you just have something to always chase.
Yeah. As always, be the truest form of yourself and keep it quintessential.
If you need help just finding something to do, just play Minecraft. That shit is endless. You can make a redstone computer. Now that's some shit.